Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravrajacharya Saraswati Sri Srimati Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Brajabhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Krishna Balaram Mandir ki jai. Shri Mathura Dham ki jai. Shri Navadip Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Chandradaya Mandir ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Londonishvaras Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva ki jai. ISKCON London's 40th anniversary celebrations ki jai. ISKCON London's 40th celebrations ki jai. ISKCON London's 40th anniversary celebrations ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Gangamai ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Gaur Premanandi. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurmalatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Swaram Rupakadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachari Zatarine Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhave Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So first of all, I'd like to thank His Grace Jaini Thai Prabhu for giving me the opportunity to come this morning and say a few words about Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's transcendental pastimes and activities here in London. I feel greatly honored to be once more in the presence of Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, Shri Shri Radha Londonishvara, and all the London devotees. One big defect in my life is that I don't spend enough time coming before their lordships. Of course, in the beginning, when I joined, they were the only deities in ISKCON UK existing at that time, and of course will go on existing eternally. Krishna, of course, is the Parameshwar, the supreme controller, not only of London, but of every single planet within this universe, and not just this universe, but every universe that exists. And of course, he's also controlling all the other controllers. He's the origin of all the controllers, all the expansions, beginning with here, and he's the original spiritual master. And all the bona fide spiritual masters in our Guru Parampara, they're all getting their inspiration and power from Lord Balaram. And so Srila Prabhupada was so magnanimous that he introduced, I was just mentioning downstairs to some devotees who were standing outside when I arrived, that no other spiritual authority from India had the notion of exporting Jagannath Rath Yatra from Jagannath Puri. This is Prabhupada's unique gift to the world. And Srila Prabhupada was so expert at engaging anyone who had a slight inclination towards understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, starting off with Malati, when she just happened to acquire a little wooden doll. She wasn't quite sure what, of course, the doll represented way back in 1967 in San Francisco. But Prabhupada always took note how Krishna and Balaram and Subhadra Devi, they're the most empowered personalities, and they manifested themselves in so many unique ways. Actually, of course, Prabhupada, besides worshipping Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, also worshipped his own personal deities, and he said that the Lord is so kind that he comes even in a small form, because not only is he the greatest of the great, the largest of all, anything large, he's also the smallest of the small. So he accommodates himself in so many amazing ways. And we were doubly fortunate that not only did the devotees introduce Prabhupada's desire to have Rath Yatra festivals held all over the world, in all the major cities of the world, but he also, of course, by the arrangement of Krishna, our Radha Krishna deities came, and it appeared in a very extraordinary way. So that gives you some idea how special this place is. London. London would be very drab without the presence of Srila Prabhupada, without the presence of Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, and without the presence of Shri Shri Radha Londonishvaras. But this is the amazing legacy that Srila Prabhupada left for us. So the theme of this morning's talk is how we can remain in Krishna consciousness life after life, not just for 40 years. Actually, 40 years is just a little flash in the pan of time. And Srila Prabhupada was able to captivate the hearts and minds of so many young boys and girls due to his very intimate dealings with all of us. Before I speak further, there's one thing I just want to clear up for the record. That Rancho Prabhu mentioned that one of the first services I engaged him in was to collect all the Mongol Arti sweets in the kitchen in the basement and bring them up to the temple president's office. I was trained up, and I feel myself very fortunate by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami. He came over to London in November 1969 as a brahmachari. He was Tamal Krishna Das brahmachari. And he flew over from Los Angeles. And there he was in charge of Sankirtan. And at that particular time in 1969, the main thing that Prabhupada was pushing, and also of course Tamal Krishna was pushing just as equally enthusiastically, was distribution of Back to Godhead magazines. And in fact, Prabhupada made a statement that he wanted Back to Godhead magazine to become as popular as Time and Newsweek. And he also wanted the figures to be as large as the distribution figures for Time and Newsweek magazines. So Tamal Krishna took that instruction to heart, and at that time all the Back to Godhead magazines were being printed by Dai Nippon in Japan, this big Japanese printing company. Of course, they also printed the first 2 volumes of the Krishna book. That was in 1970. So he came over to see Srila Prabhupada with the excuse that he wanted to report the latest Back to Godhead magazine distribution figures. But he ended up staying a lot longer. And so I was really blessed at that time that we got to know each other extremely well. In those days, I was a bit like this. I was very skinny. And so Tamal showed me great favor in the sense that he adopted me. He said that you remind me so much of Vishnujan, so you can be my associate like that. And so I learned so much from him. And one thing I learned was to respect Mahaprasadam. Not just by eating it, but also by keeping it for guests, for VIP guests that would come and visit the temple, especially those who were interested in donating money. Because in those days, we didn't really have a lot of money. We'd go out on the streets with conch shells, which was a standard paraphernalia, and incense sticks. We'd buy those from India Craft. I mentioned that I bought my first beads that Prabhupada chanted on. They came from India Craft and Oxford Street. Remember that shop? It's not far actually from here, just around the corner. And so he trained me up. He trained me up how to be a temple commander, how to be a treasurer, how to keep accounts. Because formerly, when we were in Berry Place for just a month or so, Mukunda happened to be the treasurer and Gurudas was the temple president. And Mukunda used to keep track of, income and expenditure. And he used to write them down in pencil on brown paper bags. So these brown paper bags didn't really last very long, and sometimes it was a little bit, it was really hard to figure out what was being spent and what was being made. We did have a little source of income other than street collection with the conch shells. We'd shake these, we'd put a few old pennies, because this is of course pre-decimalization. And so we would put the coins in the conch shell and shake these things in front of people's faces. And a lot of people were quite afraid of them because they weren't sure what they represented. And we said, put your money, whatever donation you have for Krishna, put it in this, because the conch shell is very pure and your money will become purified by putting it in the conch shell. And then we give them a stick of incense that they give more than a shilling. We give a florin, half a crown, or sometimes, if we're really fortunate, someone would give a 10-shilling note. But usually it was a few copper old pennies that they would put in there. So our average daily collection was about £10 a day. Of course, there was 240 pence in a pound, so it was more than double the number of pence that we have today in a pound. And some or another we managed to scrape by and pay for the rent. For a very close, the rent there was £500 a month. And there was a donation box in front of the altar, and also, of course, we're encouraging the Indian merchant community to give donations, and I remember there's one very nice Sindhi fruit and vegetable wholesaler, and he used to give us all kinds of really interesting Indian vegetables, because he imported all these exotic Indian vegetables. So sometimes we don't know exactly how to cook those preparations. His name is Mr. Wani. Remember Mr. Wani? W-A-N-I. He was very generous. So I have to honestly say, a lot of those Mangalati sweets went to Mr. Wani. I wasn't eating them behind a closed door secretly. Although I have to admit that I really like to eat remnants of Srila Prabhupada's prasadam, maha maha, as we say, after Prabhu finishes meal. And I was mentioning that I had the good fortune to get the opportunity to massage Srila Prabhupada while we were staying out at Tittenhurst Park. And I thought at that time, well, it's a one-off opportunity. You know, Trivikrama's got this, you know, toothache problem, and that's going to pass, and he's going to go back to his regular service. But the reward for massaging Srila Prabhupada was, this is what Jamuna told me. In fact, she told me to hang around and not leave. Otherwise, I would have missed that opportunity. But every time anyone massaged Srila Prabhupada at that time, they got to eat all of Prabhupada's remnants that he left on his plate, half chewed orange slices and half eaten chapatis, and you know, maybe there was a little bit left of the subject because Jamuna was cooking, and of course Jamuna was really super expert, and everything that she cooked tasted like nectar. But it became even more nectarian because Srila Prabhupada had eaten. So, and the nice thing was, and I mentioned this before, that we didn't need to share those remnants with anybody. It was also a big deal. I always look forward to that. So the next day when Trivikram went in to massage Prabhupada, he was feeling much better. After he had also consumed Prabhupada's Maha Maha, he came back to the room and he said, Prabhupada must have been quite impressed with your massage because he wants you to continue. And he didn't look very happy when he said that, because it meant that we were going to be taking turns. He says, as long as Prabhupada's in England, and Prabhupada actually stayed for 3 months. That's a long time for Prabhupada to stay in a new temple. Well, actually, we didn't even have really a temple. It was temporary accommodation. But he stayed, you know, all the way from September up until the 21st of December. So, but then this Canadian family came over from Montreal, Ishan and the Babati and their little child. And Ishan, I don't know if any of the Shamsun and Gurudas mentioned or Jamina mentioned, but he liked to play the trumpet. And he would go out in Harinam, and he'd always be at the end of the line playing his trumpet. And he played it quite well, actually. And he also wanted the opportunity to massage Srila Prabhupada, and so he actually approached Prabhupada one day on a morning walk and said, "Oh Prabhupada, I just really like to be able to serve you by massaging your body." And so Prabhupada is so compassionate, so merciful, that all of a sudden there was 3 of us. So now there was 2 of us that weren't very happy, not just the one. But somehow it worked out, and so we took turns in massaging, the 3 of us. And later on I'll just explain about my kind of desire to eat Prabhupada's remnants, and how one can learn a lesson from this. In 1972 in Berry Place, Prabhupada had just come from Africa, from East Africa. And the weather, of course, Prabhupada always appeared to be completely transcendental to time and to weather conditions, but this particular time, it was very humid in Nairobi, where Prabhupada had been, and he came to London, and it was very cold and very miserable. And Prabhupada caught a virus, a flu. He became really sick. In fact, in the middle of the night, after after he arrived, he called for Shamsundar and he practically collapsed in Shamsundar's arms. He had a high fever, he was sweating, his kurta was soaked. And so he asked Shamsundar to stay with him the whole night, the whole evening. And the next morning, he felt a little better, but he understood that there was an imbalance, according to Ayurvedic medicine. There was an imbalance in the kapha, the pitta, and the vayu, the mucus, the bile, and the air. So there's too much mucus being produced, and so there was an imbalance. And Malati happened to be cooking for Srila Prabhupada at that time. So he instructed Malati to prepare some green chili pakoras. So Prabhupada particularly wasn't in the habit of eating spicy food, but he specifically said, this time I need these green chili pakoras, and Malati, of course, she went and made the green chili pakoras, and when she was bringing them up, she asked Prabhupada, why are you taking green chili pakoras with your meal? And Prabhupada said, because I have a lack of heat in my body, there's an imbalance, and by eating 12 green chili pakoras has the same heating potency as drinking 1 bottle of gin. Now you have to understand that Prabhupada he was a pharmacist, so he knew all kinds of very interesting things. And of course the green chili pakoras cut through the mucus. So I didn't know that Prabhupada had ordered these green chili pakoras. As I mentioned, I get really single-minded, and I was kind of like hiding and watching the plate go into Prabhupada's room. For that particular day, I just remember I was really lusting after Prabhupada's Maha. So then I waited for the plate to come out, and in those days, Malati would take Prabhupada's plate down to the basement, because the kitchen was in the basement, and then there's a prasadam room. Actually, there was a little shoe room. There was a kitchen, a shoe room, and the prasadam room. That was the devotee prasadam in the basement. And so, what she would do was she would transfer all of Prabhupada's remnants onto another plate. And so I kind of timed, I was kind of sneaking down the stairs and calculating, well, she's going to transfer Prabhupada's remnants, and then she's going to go upstairs and do something else. Then I waited for her to leave the basement area and go upstairs. And I was hiding the whole time, and I went downstairs, and she had switched off the light in the prasadam room. So I thought, well, this is a stroke of luck. I'm in the dark and by myself, I'll just eat all of Prabhupada's remnants right now. And so I started to do that, and I was kind of furtively doing that because I expected anyone at any moment to come down the stairs. And I didn't really want to be found out either, so I was eating sometimes you do that. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. And you know what they say, stolen fruit always seems to taste sweeter. Right? So I wasn't really stealing it, I was just being very selfish and eating it all by myself. But I was doing this in the dark, and I wasn't really noticing what I was putting in my mouth. I just thought, well, it's all Prabhupada's mouth, it's all very special, and then all of a sudden I got this incredible explosion of heat, intense heat, and it was like burning the inside of my mouth. What on earth is that? But I was thinking, I can't stop, I have to keep eating, And then because she made more than just 12. She made a lot of green chili pakoras. I didn't actually count how many green chili pakoras she made that were still on the plate, because I was just so anxious that someone's going to come down and say, "What are you doing here? Why aren't you distributing this to everybody?" Because I was kind of meditating when I was massaging Prabhupada this is in 1972. in 1969, that was like the habit of all those devotees who got to massage Prabhupada. They could eat all of Prabhupada's remnants, but I knew I wasn't in that category anymore. I wasn't massaging Prabhupada. There was, his name was Arvind. He was the Prabhupada's servant at that time. But I was just absolutely determined that I wasn't going to leave any evidence. I was going to eat all the evidence, and then nobody could criticize me. But in the meantime, because I felt like there was smoke coming out of my ears and out my nostrils, and my head was about to explode, and I was running around in circles, trying to contain this like eruption of intense volcanic heat within the mouth, my mouth. So the lesson to be learned is if you're going to take Maha Prasad, take it with the lights on. Make sure you know what you're putting in your mouth before you stick it in your mouth. So Srila Prabhupada, he was so expert, as I said, at captivating our hearts and encouraging us to surrender, at least to try to make the endeavor to surrender to his instructions. And at the same time, he was so merciful. He was so merciful, of course, with his time, with his energy. I mean, just like I mentioned that Prabhupada watched that BBC music program, Top of the Pops, and we were getting some royalties, some revenue from the sale. Actually, I think we're getting like 1 old penny per single record that was sold. But that old penny, you know, became lots of pennies and became several £100. I remember actually one time I had to go to the Apple office, the Apple building in Savile Row, just off Regent Street, to collect a check of £700. So we did have some income coming in from that, and we also, of course, did have at that time too our own agent. We had an agent called Terry King, and even this was when we were staying at Tittenhurst Park. Sometimes we would have some nightclub that we were appearing in, and our fee was always the same, regardless of the number of tickets that were sold. I remember one time we went to a place called the Revolution Club, which was situated in Mayfair, a very exclusive, I don't know if it still exists, but it was a very, very chic nightclub. And so wealthy people would go there, they'd have a dinner and entertainment. They'd sit down to have, well, the usual things that they have with their alcohol, and there would be some, and so that particular evening we were the entertainment. And it just so happened to coincide that the same evening we were going with Srila Prabhupada to Oxford Town Hall. And when he was mentioning about Prabhupada dancing, sometimes he would be sitting on the cushion, but and other times he would get off the cushion off the table and he would dance, you know, very ecstatically. So you can see that there's so many nice photos that were taken by Gurudas at that Oxford Town Hall engagement. And the way you can tell it's Oxford Town Hall is because there's a huge pipe organ at the back. Now sometimes that's misread. It's actually not Conway Hall. I think in the beginning there used to be some photographs of that particular engagement. And Mukunda was playing the organ, because he's, as we heard, a very expert pianist, jazz pianist, an all-round expert musician. And so that inspired everyone there. It inspired Prabhupada, the sound, because it was really reverberating in that enclosed space, in that town hall. And the other thing was that practically all the seats were taken by different students, and Prabhupada was really happy with that engagement because so many of the students asked very intelligent questions afterwards, and so Prabhupada was very enlivened. And he actually went so far as to say, he said that the London temple is for the mass, and the Oxford temple, he said, the next temple after London must be Oxford. And he said, Oxford is for the class. He said, this is a place where these students that are studying now, they become future leaders, world leaders, future world leaders. And of course, we know that Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University. He ended up becoming, what was it, the 42nd US president or something like that. They became the president of the most powerful country in the world. So that's why Prabhupada wanted a temple in Oxford for the class, and London is for the mass. Said like that. So that evening, we came back late. We all traveled together. We had this like minibus, and we all sat in the car. Srila Prabhupada always liked to sit next to the driver. And as he was looking through the windscreen, he saw this sticker. It was a rented vehicle, and I remember the sticker said, "Texaco, citizen of the world." That was the sticker. And Prabhupada said, "Yes." He said, "This is nice. We are also citizen of the world, not of India, not of London, not of this place, but we're citizen of the world." I like that phrase. So we got back to Tittenhurst Park quite late. It was about 11 o'clock. And it just so happened that we were booked into that Revolution Club in Mayfair. And we were supposed to be performing at midnight. And Prabhupada actually noticed that we weren't ready to, call it a day and go back and take rest. That we were actually getting ready to go into this program. It just so happened that the same time, oh, and by the way, I didn't have to really wait that long to get initiated, my first initiation, because I mentioned that the first question I put to Prabhupada was, when can I take initiation? And because some or another, I got the opportunity to be with Prabhupada the following day, and he got to know me, and he was asking me questions, and I only had to wait a few more days, I think something like 5 days. Then Prabhupada decided to have a fire sacrifice, and there were actually 4 of us at that time that were desiring to take initiation of Srila Prabhupada. There was an English boy. His name was Jimmy Doody. I know that sounds very funny to Americans, the word Doody, right? Jimmy Doody sounds very down home or something. But that was his name. He's an English boy, and he didn't shave up like us. He kept his long hair and his long beard. And Prabhupada he wasn't fazed by that. Actually, he said that. He said, this is acceptable. That if you want to take initiation and you don't want to shave up, then you can grow your hair here and here. Actually, one time, Hayagriva popped in to see Prabhupada when we were staying at John Lennon's place. And of course, Hayagriva also had a lot of hair. I mean, like masses of hair and a big beard. But that particular evening, we were all just sitting with Prabhupada very informally, and without warning, all of a sudden the door opened and Hayagriva appeared. Well, at least his head appeared at the door. And so then Prabhupada noticed him, and he said, "Oh, it's our Hayagriva." And so Hayagriva said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I've done something I think you'll be very happy with me." And Prabhupada said, "What is that?" And then he took off his hat. He was wearing this like bubble hat. And he had shaved all the hair off his head, but he had left his beard. So Prabhupada looked at his face and he said, "What is this? You're looking just like Musalman." Then he made this point that, you know, if you want to shave your head and keep your, this is not good to keep your beard and shave your head. There's a couple of others that have also done the same thing. He said, if you want to shave off all the hairs in your head, then you have to also shave all the hairs off your face. Be clean shaven. Otherwise, you just keep the hair in your head and your face, just like so many. But don't shave your head and keep your beard. He said, then you look like Muslim. Not very pleasing. That's what Prabhupada was commenting like that. Anyway, Jimmy Doody was one of the 4 of us, and there was an American devotee, nice brahmachari, from Santa Barbara, and there was an English girl. So we were all sitting there. Jimmy Doody had a very pretty English girlfriend, a blonde English girlfriend. And she wasn't particularly as enthusiastic as him to embrace Krishna consciousness. And as I mentioned, Prabhupada did everything in those days. He even did marriages. He did a wedding for Devaki and Devadatta. And they had a little child, and he was sitting at the fire sacrifice, and Prabhupada noticed that they wanted to be married by fire sacrifice. And Prabhupada looked at them and he saw the little child. He said, normally the child comes after the fire sacrifice, not before the fire sacrifice. That's the only comment he made. Otherwise he did it, you know. It was just like, amazingly, you know, as I said, a notion of compassion. Anyway, so Prabhupada, as usual, was, you know, he was sitting there. We collected bricks and earth and sticks and firewood, and we'd got the grains and everything. We're all sitting there, and Prabhupada had his back to a window, and he was just about to start putting the colors on the earth. And we're all sitting there, and we had our paper plates, and on the paper plates, one plate had the neck beads and the japa beads, and another plate, no, not the neck beads, because Prabhupada had the japa beads, so he had chanted on them. And there was a plate with mixed grains, like sesame and rice and different types of grains, and a banana as well, of course. So we're all sitting there, and there's a kirtan going on, and all of a sudden this, you know, Jimmy Doody's girlfriend appeared at the window, outside. She was outside looking in, and she was trying to, you know, grab his attention. And he was looking down, then he kind of looked at Prabhupada, and after a few moments, he saw his girlfriend at the window. And this is behind Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is back to the window. And she's like making movements, please come out, you know, I want to talk to you. So Jimmy Doody got up, he was just about to get initiated, and he went over to Prabhupada and whispered in Prabhupada's ear, excuse me, Prabhupada, I just have to step out for a few moments, is that okay? And again, Prabhupada was just not phased. He just slightly moved his head. But yeah, okay, you can go, no problem. So he went out of the temple, and we never saw him again. He was that close to getting initiated by Prabhupada, but Maya Devi came in the form of his girlfriend and stole him away. And Prabhupada never actually, he never mentioned this incident to anybody. It just happened. It's just one of those things that happened. Well, Krishna wants you to take initiation, then you get initiation. If Maya wants to drag you away, Krishna is the source of both remembrance and forgetfulness. So, you know, he was that close. And that really also impressed me so much. Prabhupada is absolutely transcendental. He's really exhibiting this amazing detachment, because that's also a quality that a pure devotee displays, along with all the other amazing qualities. So then, of course, we got our names. The girl got the name Preetha, and she later on married Digvijaya. and the American boy, he got the name Radha Rahman, and he was a bass guitarist. He was a very good musician. And so he would always go in all the different venues with us, wherever we went. And sometimes, of course, we were going abroad as well. Even in we went to Amsterdam in 1970, and we played in the Concertgebouw. There's a couple of Dutch devotees here, and they know what the Concertgebouw is. It's like the equivalent of the Royal Albert Hall. It's got thousands of seats, right? It's about, what, 4,000 seats? Yeah. It's a very fancy, very costly hall. And our manager was quite a tricky character, because he advertised that particular venue, and he put the Radha Krishna Temple in small letters, produced by George Harrison in large letters, will be playing at the Concertgebouw on the 20th of January 1970. So, and he inundated the whole city with these posters everywhere. And so it was very misleading, and actually the whole hall was filled up because they thought that George Harrison was going to be appearing at the Concertgebouw. Of course he didn't. He didn't even know about that. We were the ones that were appearing at the Concertgebouw. We even had a warm-up act. Alex Harvey. I don't know if anybody's heard of that name, Alex Harvey, but he was a very famous folk guitarist. He was popular, very popular. And when we were sitting in the green room, this very famous Dutch poet called Simon Winkenoch, he came to see us. He passed away this year in July. I personally knew him also. He was actually quite a close friend of Allen Ginsberg. And he had gone over to New York because Allen Ginsberg, of course, was into chanting Hare Krishna and meeting with the Swami. Because he saw Prabhupada as a down-home Swami. He wasn't an uptown Swami living in big palatial, penthouses filled up with French furniture. But he was living in the Bowery with the bums and the meth heads and the alcoholics, and So he liked that. He really related to Prabhupada like that. So he had met this Dutch poet, and he told him, he said, well, if the Hare Krishnas ever come to Holland, to Amsterdam, you should go and see them. And that was really what saved our lives, that chance meeting I had with Allen Ginsberg, because he met us and he was really happy, and of course, these wonderful devotees, Jamuna, Shamsundar, Gurudas, Mukunda, they're very, very charismatic devotees, especially empowered by Srila Prabhupada. And so he was really impressed with us as a group. And so when it came time for us to go down and appear on stage, he was waiting in the wings. He wanted to see what we were going to do. And the hall was absolutely packed out. Packed out. Every seat had been purchased. And we were still getting our standard fee, which was £300. And I kept thinking, this guy's totally ripping us off. Because that's what he paid us for, the Revolution Club. Actually, that Revolution Club, when Prabhupada saw, I'm sorry I'm jumping around now, but I do that, I leave so many loose ends. But, Prabhupada saw that we were about to leave at 11:30 at night to go somewhere, and he said, where are you going? And Gurudas said, oh, we have this appointment in a nightclub. And Prabhupada said, what is that nightclub? And he said, well, it's a fancy place, they charge a lot of money, they have a sit-down meal, and there's some entertainment, and tonight we're the entertainment. And Prabhupada said, oh, so they're eating so much meat and drinking so much alcohol. He said, it sounds just like hell. And then he thought for a moment, he said, but devotees, they're also prepared to go to hell. He said, you can go to hell. He said, as long as you come back. He said, don't linger, don't loiter in hell. Don't remain there. Don't become infatuated. But you do your chanting and your preaching, and you come straight back. So he was very much aware of the fact that we were, famous in our own right. Even, of course, Prabhupada came with us to Harlem, not Harlem, Hilversum, to the Hilversum television studios, because we were invited over there for the Dutch equivalent of Top of the Pops, called Top Pop. And Mukunda asked the organizer, can our spiritual teachers with us, can he also come with us, and will he be able to speak? And that was also a half-hour, music show. And you don't usually have elderly Indian gentlemen who are going to speak. But some or another, because Mukunda is a real charmer. Of all the, Guridas is funny and humorous, and far out, and Shamsundar is really, he always reminds me of Clint Eastwood whenever he talks. He's got this really smooth way of speaking. But Mukunda is the charmer. So he charmed the pants off this manager. And he said, yeah. And he said, can he speak? He said, well, normally we don't do this, but we'll give him 2 minutes to speak. That's not a lot of time. I'm already going over the time. And I've been speaking for 45 minutes. And so Mukunda he had already told Prabhupada that they were going over there. We were going over there. There was the flights were paid for by the television studios and picking us up in the van and so on from Tittenhurst Park and flying us over there and picking us up. And so Mukunda said, well, Prabhupada, we're going to do this this program on Top Pop in the Netherlands. And we've all been invited over. And we'd also like you to come too. But the only unfortunate thing is, we've asked them if you can speak, and they said yes, but only for 2 minutes. And we'll be gone early, we'll leave early in the morning, and we won't be back until late at night, because, when you go to the studios, you have to hang around, you have to wait for your turn, because there's other musicians hanging around, doing their thing. But Prabhupada was undaunted. He said, I'm coming with you. He said, even 2 minutes is sufficient time to explain the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And as far as I know, that's the only time that Prabhupada ever appeared with a pop group on television. That was also very unique. And it was just amazing how Prabhupada, he just was, so malleable like that. He just loved to get the opportunity to come with his young disciples, because he loved to be with us. Actually, he really liked us so much. He wanted to be with us, and so he didn't think, well, I'm an elderly man, what is that going to look like, on television? No, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to use that opportunity to explain the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness to all the Dutch people on television, because he'd seen, the effect in the UK. He'd seen the very, very positive effect in the UK of the media and television. And so therefore he said, yes, I'm coming. And so we were talking about how to become attached to staying. Actually, Prabhupada did so many different things. And I could talk for days and days, actually. But we don't have the time. But really what was so captivating about Prabhupada that, I feel so much in debt to Srila Prabhupada, because he gave so much of himself. Even if I take millions of births in devotional service, still I won't be able to repay the debt I owe to Srila Prabhupada. So it's that indebtedness, that's the thing that keeps me anchored to Srila Prabhupada. That keeps me thinking, well, I can't let Prabhupada down. He went to so much time and trouble, he spent so much blood in writing his books and doing his dictation and giving so much personal instruction, personal association, personal love, sharing everything. Even I remember one time, again in Bury Place, I got this phone call, and it was an important phone call, and it was for Srila Prabhupada. It was in the afternoon, and in those days Prabhupada would take fruit about 4 o'clock. And Prabhupada was just sitting, because normally he would eat alone. He didn't eat with us, generally speaking. He liked to eat alone. So I had to go in there and interrupt him. I knocked on the door, paid my obeisances, and Prabhupada had a plate of fruit in front of him. The first thing he did was, he immediately handed me a big handful of fruit from his plate. Because if you're doing something, you don't expect someone to come in and out, you can be a little annoyed or irritated, isn't it? That's generally what happens in our interaction with each other. Well, you're disturbing me. Come back later. No, immediately it was just a big handful of fruit, almost more than I could hold in my two hands. And then I explained what I was doing there, and he immediately came up with me to make the phone call. He was that accessible. I know, different God brothers who've really done well in Krishna consciousness and they've taken on that big burden of becoming spiritual masters themselves, hardly had any association. And yet they're so inspired. They're inspired, of course, by what Yadavar is doing, by collecting all these amazing films, and showing Prabhupada in all these different settings, and interacting with devotees, interacting with academics. You can see in Los Angeles, there's Dr. Stilson Judah, and there's all these other academics, and how he's just treating them like they're bhaktas, basically. Even when Prabhupada was interviewed at the airports or in television studios, he just saw everyone as a potential devotee. He wasn't exactly, thinking, oh, here is a certain academic, or this is a certain journalist or a TV presenter. He just saw everyone that, well, all right, you've temporarily forgotten about Krishna, and now it's my duty, my responsibility to make you Krishna conscious. And it's such a heartwarming feeling. Because I love to see Prabhupada in all these different settings that I wasn't personally there. I didn't go with Srila Prabhupada to New Zealand or Australia or South Africa or America. But it's just wonderful. I mean, we can't sing the praises and glories of Srila Prabhupada enough. Because that's the most captivating. If you want to know Krishna, you have to get to know Prabhupada. That's all. So, and the way you can get to know Prabhupada is you hang around in ISKCON. Because actually Prabhupada said ISKCON is not different from Prabhupada himself. He said that several times. ISKCON and myself are non-different. So that's the key for sustenance. If you want to be successful in this human form of life, always stay within ISKCON and never leave ISKCON. So, we're supposed to finish in 3 or 4 minutes' time. So, is there any questions?
What did Srila Prabhupada say in those 2 minutes?
Then I won't have time to answer everybody else's questions. Well, he just basically said that we're chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It's a great chant for deliverance. It was the preceptor for this chanting is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a recommended process for self-realization. It's so simple that even a child can practice. So we're just requesting everyone throughout the world to take up the chanting and go back home, back to Godhead. That's basically what he said.
What happened with that poet in Holland when you were...
Oh yeah, like I said, I always keep thinking, so many things hanging. All right, so when we were on the stage, we got really a lot of negative feedback from the audience because they kept calling out, "Where's George Harrison? We paid good money to see George Harrison. We didn't come to see you guys." And we thought, oh no, this is... So one of our devotees, his name was Ramatanu, he was from New Mexico. He was a radio DJ for some music channel before he became a devotee. He always chanted with his left hand. And the other thing he would do, of course he had to clean himself with his right. Prabhupada actually tried to convince him they should be chanting with his right hand. And he said, well, if you can't do that, and you eat with your left hand, then you have to use your right hand when you go for a call of nature. That was the only time I ever heard Prabhupada say that, to use your right hand to do that. And the other thing he used to do was he used to love to spin around in kirtans. And he would spin so fast his dhoti would fly off. And more than one occasion, because he wasn't very expert at tying his dhoti. But he never seemed to get embarrassed. Anyway, he was given the job to calm down the audience. It didn't work. They got more enraged, and they actually started coming out of their seats. I mean, they wanted to lynch us, basically. I was really fearing for my life at that moment. You know, I think all of us were thinking, oh no, this is turning seriously bad, seriously nasty. But then Simon Vinkenhoek, at the 11th, at that right moment, he came out of the wings, and he put his hands up like this, and they all recognized him, and the mood completely changed. And then he got them to sit back in their seats and calm them down, and he spoke in Netherlands and Dutch to them, and said, no, these are really nice people, you should listen to what they're saying, you should get into the chanting, and you'll be able to stay high forever. And so he was talking their language, and he saved our lives. He honestly saved our lives. And I had the good fortune to meet him this year, before he passed away. And he was giving a recital of some of his famous poems in this little square where there's a Liefertje. Liefertje? You know, this little boy statue in Amsterdam. Spouw, in Spouw. And so we went to that little tent where he was, and it's set up like, it was almost like his room. There was furniture there, and books and things, and a table and chairs, and comfortable furniture, nice looking furniture, and this outside area, you know, this Liefertje in Spouw. And as soon as he saw us, you know, with the tilak, and he starts, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. He knew the mantra, he knew it. He had not forgotten. And there was one very nice Dutch Prabhupada disciple, Hayeshwar. And Hayeshwar translated a lot of Prabhupada's books into the Dutch language. And he had gone to visit him regularly. And so Simon, he told me, he said, I'll never forget, before Hayeshwar passed away, what he told me to do. He said, Simon, you have to give up eating meat and just chant Hare Krishna. And that stuck with him. He remembered that. It was just that. And I hadn't seen him for 40 years. Almost 40 years. It was 1970, and then. So devotees make a very lasting impression with people. Sometimes we underestimate that we do that. We have an amazing, you know, we leave a lasting impression with so many people. And Prabhupada, of course, you know, his impression was just, it's like branded in my brain. You know. It's just something that sustains me every day. Dhananjaya Vishnu Prabhu.
Can I just ask, what was Srila Prabhupada?
1 second, Prabhu.
I did ask Adhikata Prabhu once, but I was interested in what Srila Prabhupada's 18-day plan was to take over the whole world.
He didn't have an 18-day plan. He told us that the Pandavas, they had an 18-day plan. Of course, they didn't know it was going to be just 18 days. I mean, they embarked on the war, the Battle of Kurukshetra, and within 18 days they had conquered the enemy, and then Maharaja Yudhisthira was then given the opportunity to sit on the throne, and Hastinapur become the emperor of the world. And, you know, a question was asked to Srila Prabhupada, is it possible that we could also do that? That we could take over the world in 18 days? And Prabhupada said, first you have to become qualified. And you have to become convinced that you can take over the world in 18 days. Not just talk about it, but actually use your intelligence how to do it. So there was no 18-day plan as such. But we discussed that with Prabhupada, you know. And he said, if you're surrendered to Krishna, then, you know, then he said, anything's possible for Krishna. If Krishna sees that you're qualified, if you want to take over, what are you going to do with all the people? How are you going to engage them? How are you going to please them? No, but I say, how? How? Are you empowered to do those things? The Pandavas were empowered. Why? Because they had Krishna on their side. But another time a devotee said to Prabhupada, I had a dream, and in the dream I saw that every person on this planet had their arms upraised and all calling out very loudly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Prabhupada said, this is a wonderful dream. And he said, don't think that your work is finished when you've got everyone chanting Hare Krishna on this planet. He said, there's so many other planets you can go to. But there's so many fallen souls. So it doesn't just end with this planet becoming Krishna conscious. Prabhupada is always thinking seriously big. He never wanted us to run out of service. Please finish. This is a paper text. PLS, FINISH. Questions and answers. What's this? 9:30. Okay. And then thanks. That's what it says?
Yeah.
So can I just follow on from that? I was interested to know how Srila Prabhupada wanted Varnashram established.
Yes. Of course. Varnas and ashrams. In the temple we have the ashrams. But what do we have outside? We have some farm communities where they're also trying to establish Varnashram dharma. That's going to take time. It takes manpower and land and capital. Manpower, land and capital. If you have the manpower and if you have the land and you have the capital, then you can very quickly establish Varnashram. But now here's a thing to think about. In 1973, when Prabhupada first visited the manor, in that famous helicopter ride from the airport, he saw the place, because we took him around to see the building, of course, inside, because it was raining that particular day. But he saw, of course, from the helicopter, the location. It was in a rural, agrarian location. And you notice there was cows in the fields. So he said to me, he said, so I want this place to be known as New Gokula. And he said that this place should be famous for cow protection, for Goraksh. And he said we should keep at least 150 cows. We should have a nice Goshala. And because he was directing those instructions to me, I said, well, you know, Srila Prabhupada, we only have 17 acres, and out of the 17 acres there's only a 6-acre field. The rest of the land is made up of trees, a big pond, and a big lawn, and you know, different wooded areas. And I'd never been to India, because of course in India 6 acres is a lot of land for a Goshala. I mean, you know, I don't know if you know this, but our Krishna Balaram temple, you know, the Krishna Balaram Goshala is on a similar amount of land, and they're keeping 350 cows and bulls and calves. Of course, they're shifting quite soon. They're going to another place, Shergar, where we're renting government land, 400 acres of land, because animals need, you know, space to move around. So I'm not a farmer, but so what happened was, Prabhupada asked me, he said, so if we can't keep 150 cows in 6 acres, how much land do you need? And off the top of my head, because you know, you have to answer, when Prabhupada asks a question and you go, I don't know, the Prabhupada will give you this stare that you feel, oh no, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I couldn't answer? In other words, Prabhupada didn't tolerate fools. He didn't tolerate fools. So on the spur of the moment, I said, well, we need at least 1 acre per cow. I said, so? We buy another 150 acres of land? What is the difficulty? He was that determined that we should immediately, and then he said we should buy a double-decker bus, London bus, red bus, take it into central London, fill it up with British people, bring them out there, and then they can see an ideal Vedic community, a living example of a Vedic community. He said, besides the cows, because the cows will get so much milk, we'll make from the milk cheese, cream, butter, ghee, yogurt, and he said there can also be handicrafts, casting of deities, spinning and weaving, wool to make clothing. Prabhupada was always thinking, he was a revolutionary. Of course, we haven't done those things like spinning and weaving and making, of course, we have all these little, what do they call that material that the deities are made of? The hand-painted ones? Plastic, is it? Resin. It's a kind of, it's an oil-based product. Actually, Prabhupada wanted brass deities. He didn't want particularly resin ones. And so, of course, that's why Prabhupada called the deities that were installed there on Janmashtami 1973, Radha, Gokul, and Nanda. Because who is the bliss of Gokul? Krishna. So you might have seen now that there is a very nice Goshala complex, which they call New Gokula. And that can provide accommodation for 68. I think, isn't that right? Some number like that. I was told, I was given a tour of the new buildings. So that's not even half the number of cows that Prabhupada wanted us to have in 1973. And that's 30, how many years ago? Almost 37 years ago, 36 years ago. So that's the thing, we have to, sometimes Prabhupada gave us so much instruction in what to do, but it may take one lifetime, it may take many, many lifetimes to actually get to that point that, that Prabhupada wanted us to achieve. So, but someday in the future, I'm very, very optimistic. I'm a real optimist because I have children of my own and I can see how they're practicing Krishna consciousness and how they're very much dedicated to the holy name and to just maintaining their friendship within the devotee circles. That in the future, perhaps not in our lifetime, again we will see amazing, miraculous things happening. And why not? Because actually we're all helping to bring about a change in society's consciousness and to fulfill the prediction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually Krishna himself. So when Krishna says something, he doesn't get it wrong. He's always right. He's always right. He's never wrong. We may be sometimes right, but a lot of the times we get it wrong. But Krishna, when he says something, it's absolute. What he says is absolute. And so what Krishna's pure representative tells us is also on the same absolute platform. And of course we know that Prabhupada didn't leave us in 1977 because he was disgusted with us. He said, no, actually I'm leaving because I'm confident now that things will go on increasing in my absence. That's why he left, because he had confidence and love. So that's the legacy that all of us have to keep pushing, keep promoting. And Prabhupada always used to say, at least try to maintain what I've given you. But the ideal thing is you try to increase, but at least maintain. And then if you can increase more, then increase more, and Krishna will reward you also. He'll give you all the facilities that are required to push on this wonderful Sankirtan movement. And I have to say that book distribution is going on. It's just amazing, especially in India. In India, for the Prabhupada Marathon, the December, the Gita Jayanti Marathon, they call it there. Because of course they're promoting Bhagavad Gitas. Last year, almost 1 million Bhagavad Gitas were distributed in 1 month. 1 million, 10 lakhs. It's extraordinary, huh? And there's over 600 million pieces of Krishna conscious literature that's been distributed in the last 40 years. So 40 years is a momentous occasion, really, not just for temples opening, but also for distribution of Krishna conscious literature. And it's going to go on increasing and increasing, because that's the prediction that was given 500 years ago. It's 9:30, so we have to end there. Shri Shri Radha Londonishvaras ki Jai. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva ki Jai. Shri Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Shri La Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Londonishvara Dham ki Jai. The wonderful 40th anniversary celebrations, which are going to culminate tonight at the Truxie Theatre. Is it called the Truxie Theatre?
Tomorrow.
I know tomorrow is the actual day of the installation of Radha Londonishvara, but tonight is a big gala dinner in honor of the installation of Shri Shri Radha Londonishvara. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari.
Dhananjaya Prabhu ki
Jai.